thank you for inviting the Australia Institute to discuss this important issue of housing affordability. I largely agree with what Peter Tulip just said. The Help to Buy scheme, like many previous housing affordability schemes from both major parties, is a policy to boost the financial position of a particular group, usually first home buyers. The problem with these kind of policies is that they simply increase demand for housing, and this increases the price of housing. The result is that it makes housing less affordable. With regard to the Help to Buy scheme, at 10,000 properties per year, this is so small it's unlikely to have a significant impact on overall house prices. It might have some impact on the price of the kind of properties that first home buyers might want to purchase, though. Ultimately, if we want to make housing more affordable, we need policies that do one of two things. Either they increase the supply of housing or they decrease the demand for housing. If the government built more public housing, then this would make housing more affordable. In particular, it could make renting more affordable. But the most effective policy for housing affordability that the federal government could pursue is to limit negative gearing and scrap the capital gains tax discount. This would discourage property speculators and reduce the demand for housing. It would mean less housing being sold for renting and more housing being sold for owner-occupiers. It would increase home ownership rates. This would also raise more than $10 billion per year, which could be used to either build more public housing or for other uses. Housing affordability has grown to be one of the largest issues now facing Australia. It cannot be fixed with small, ineffective policies, particularly when those policies will ultimately make housing less affordable. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Grudnoff, you said earlier in your evidence that the most effective policy for housing affordability that the federal government could pursue is to limit negative gearing and scrap the capital gains tax discount. Obviously, you know that the Greens agree with this position because it is a very skewed tax these are skewed tax incentives and they are unfair. But as you said also, they would raise more than $10 billion per year, which could be invested in public housing and, maybe freezing rents. So could you kind of take us through your reasons of why you think that this is really good policy in terms of the housing crisis that we're facing now and how we address this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important to note that there's been a lot of talk about the importance of supply and increasing supply, and I agree with that. But I don't think supply is the only issue here. And the reason I say that is over the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2023, we've seen the population grow by 15%, and we've seen the number of dwellings increase by 20%. That is, over the last 10 years, dwelling supply outstripped the population. Over that same period, house prices increased by 80%. Let me give you another example. Between March 2020 and March 2022, the borders were effectively shut, and we saw the lowest population growth that we've ever seen. And during that period, house prices increased by a third. So I'm not saying that supply has no impact on house prices. Obviously it does. But there are other issues that swamp the supply side issue. And that is that we have too many speculators in the housing market. So what do I mean by speculator? I'm not just using that as a pejorative term. What I mean is that investors invest in something because they hope to get a return, a yield from it. So if you're investing in property, residential property, then you'd hope that the return you'd get in rent would be greater than the costs you incur. But we know that the vast majority of people are negatively geared, so that is not occurring at all. But negative gearing is not a good thing, right, in the long term. Sure, the government foots some of the loss, but they don't foot it all. So you've got to wait for the payoff, and that payoff is the increase in the asset price. Okay, and that's where the capital gains tax discount comes in. It makes that payoff so much larger. But that means we have a whole heap of investors who are only putting money in it because they think that the asset price is going to go up. And that's the definition of speculation. And so what we have at the moment is we have a huge amount of property speculation in the market, and reforming negative gearing and getting rid of the capital gains tax discount will reduce those number of speculators, will take the heat out of the market and make housing more affordable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grudnoff.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Grudnoff, we saw today dwelling approvals at a 12-year low. And just what policies do you think the government should be implementing to stimulate that?
Yeah, I think that if the government wants more housing, then the government should build more housing. What we need is more public housing. So if we have more public housing, then we have less stress on renters. We increase the supply of housing, and ultimately that will make housing for everybody more affordable, not just for those most in need, those most you would expect to benefit from public housing, but it'll take pressure off the whole chain of, if you like, all the different layers of home buyers, and it'll ultimately make housing more affordable.
You talked earlier about tax reform and things like capital gains tax discount and negative gearing. We heard from witnesses earlier who said that would mean a reduction in supply. I'm interested in your sort of broad take on tax reform when it comes to housing and what needs to happen there to deal with some of those I guess things that we keep hearing as a reason not to change anything.
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said in my opening remarks, you either need to increase the supply of housing, we kind of discussed that quite a bit, or you need to reduce the demand for housing, which might at first seem quite odd. But if you reduce investor demand for housing, ultimately you make housing more affordable. And if we look at when the capital gains tax discount was introduced, it was introduced in September 1999. Before that, if you added up all of the net rental gain and the net rental loss, they basically came out almost at zero. For about a decade before that, through the 90s, we saw that sometimes the total net rental position was positive, that is, people made money overall on housing, and sometimes it was slightly negative. After the introduction of the capital gains tax discount, we saw net rental loss massively increase. And that was a direct response of the fact that it was now worth negatively geared because you eventually got a payoff. You eventually saw, after you, when you sold the property, the price had gone up. It was now worth so much more because you were able to pay so much less tax on your capital gains, and that sort of flooded the market with speculators and pushed up the house price.
Mm-hmm. And so are there measures that you need to do alongside scaling back some of those tax concessions, or is your view you just need to get rid of them and let the market decide?
Get rid of those, and then you could use the funds that you'd save, the billions of dollars you would save, you can use that to stimulate more supply, to build more public housing. So therefore you're attacking it both on the demand side, you're reducing investor demand, and on the supply side, you're increasing the supply of housing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Just finally from me to Mr Grudnoff, this hearing, there's a lot of debate about housing policy in the community, as there should be, and you know, this hearing is becoming a bit of a proxy for broader debate about housing policy and strategy around supply and distribution and so on. I just want to make sure that I do get your specific view about the actual measure. So again, because I don't think you made a submission to the inquiry. So again, I guess, you know, you said we need to build more public and social housing. There's a $25 billion 10-year pipeline now, after 10 years of lack of investment. There's measures to incentivise states around new builds. There's a national planning reform blueprint. You've got a policy view around reform of negative gearing and presumably capital gains tax discounts. You know, all of that is out there in terms of housing policy debate and discussion. What is your particular view about, you know, a home equity scheme that's to assist 40,000 people while all of that policy debate goes on. Should those 40,000 people be denied the opportunity that this bill provides while that debate goes on? Or is it the view of the Australia Institute that we should do this while looking at broader things? What's your specific view about this bill?
Yes, Senator, I can understand your frustration that this is on the help to buy scheme and the discussion is on broader housing affordability. But I think that's primarily because the best thing you could say about this scheme is that it will be ineffective. That is, it won't increase house prices by very much. If the government wants to pursue housing affordability policies that work, then you'd probably have more discussion around those policies that actually work. I suppose the frustration from somebody who's been watching...
I get you on the record, and I'm fine with as I said, there should be a broad debate about housing policy in the community. I just really want to get you on the record. You don't support the bill, is that right?
I'm indifferent to this bill. I don't think it'll make very much difference at all.
All right.
If you want a yes or no.
I do want a yes or no, this being a bill inquiry, so I think you're sort of agnostic to the bill passing because you've got all of these broader concerns that you want addressed, which is fine. Thank you both very much for appearing today before the committee.
Thanks for watching. Visit australiainstitute.org.au for all our latest research, commentary and analysis, as well as details for upcoming events and webinars.